We welcome you to the 2018-2019 Division II East Region Men's Basketball and Women's Basketball Season Previews Playoff Edition right here on D2EastHoops.org. We're going to start on the men's side. Tim McCaffrey alongside Chris Granozio. We're going to give you the top 8 teams. Isn't the be-all, end-all of the world. But Chris Granozio, we each have our top 8 and who's going to host the regional. Let's start with our picks to host the men's basketball East Regional.
Interesting you say that, Tim, because I don't know if the team that I think is the best on paper can host the regional, and that would be St. Anselm's Hawks. I think this is the team that brings back the most and made the NCAA tournament last year. I think they're loaded with talent. I really like this club, and I think they will have the #1 seed. Whether or not they can host because of the size of their gym is another matter. They also have the option to host in another venue if they can. So my pick is St. Anselm to be the #1 team in the region.
Well, Chris, my pick, the Warriors of Merrimack. I think they'll be hosting the regional in the Volpe Center come 2019 end of season, and it's one of 4 teams I predict will get in from the NE10. We'll get to your selections in a moment. The other teams I think from the NE10, as you mentioned, St. A's. I also have from the Southwest Division, New Haven, and I think that sneaking into the tournament this year with the team that hosted the regional the last 2 years, the Lemoyne Dolphins. Just when you get down to the 8 team, just who knows what's going to happen. And if there's as much talent, influx of talent that has come in the last couple of years, why not throw Lemoyne a bone? Who are the rest of the teams that you have in the NE10?
I'm very similar to you. I think Lemoyne, I have them as my number 8 just because I think they'll sneak in because of all of the good that Patrick Beilein has done over the last couple of years. I think they're going to be very competitive, and I think they'll get in maybe a little bit on muscle memory, even though it is a brand new roster. Even Kobe Nwandu, who's coming in from East Stroudsburg, made an Elite 8 himself last year, not himself, but was there at the Elite 8 with the Warriors. I do agree with you that Merrimack will be there, and unlike you, I think New Haven still has a little bit too much to prove for me. I think Southern Connecticut, their crosstown rival, is getting in this year, and I think they win the division.
In the East Coast Conference, Chris, I have the University of Bridgeport and Damon getting into the NCAAs this year. What say you?
I am with you 100%. I think Damon is the team to beat right now. Bridgeport, the defending champ, is still very formidable. I think they'll come in second. St. Thomas Aquinas, I think after making the NCAA tournament the last couple of years, I think they're going to fall just short this year just because they have way too many question marks. I think they will come in third, but win 20-plus games. But I think they might be on the outside looking in this year. Just my gut.
And in the CAC, I selected Dominican, who I think will be in the top 4 this year, Chris, and a Goldie Beacom team that is finally going to get over the mountaintop.
We're exactly in alignment there as well. I think Dominican and Goldie Beacom win their respective divisions, and I think that they both make the NCAAs this year. Bloomfield, I think it was really tough for me to decide between Bloomfield and Dominican for that last spot in the CACC, but I think because Dominican brings back all of their starters and Bloomfield lost a couple of key players, I think that is the difference, but I would not be surprised if Bloomfield does get in again. You can never count out a Gerald Holmes coached team.
So in summary, my selections, Tim's selections are Merrimack to host the regional, and the rest of the teams, St. A's, New Haven, Lemoyne, Bridgeport, Damon, Dominican, and Goldie Beacom in no particular order from 2 to 8. And Chris's Granozio selections are?
I predict St. Anselm at #1. They probably won't host because Stoutenburg Gymnasium is not big enough, but they might host elsewhere. If not, I agree that Merrimack might be the host at the Volpe Center. I think Lemoyne and Southern Connecticut also in the NE10. I also think Bridgeport, Damon, Dominican, and Goldie Beacom. Those are my 8 at this moment.
I'm going to flip this chair over, and when I return, Chris Granozio is going to be rolling down the stairs, and Steve Zerdelian is going to be in this seat. That's when we return on D2EastHoops.org. Well, Steve Zerdelian now in the hot seat next to me, Tim McCaffrey, and let's go over your selection to host the 2019 Division II East Regional.
You're going to pin me down on a host right away?
Right away. That's where we started. You just heard the men's basketball podcast.
I like to talk process and leading up to how we get to this point, first and foremost. If you'd allow me that possibility to do that. Okay. When I look at year to year, one thing that you see on the women's side, usually half or so of the teams that were in the previous year return for the next year. I have exactly a 50% split. I have 4 teams that were in the field last year returning this season and 4 that aren't. Now, the 4 that aren't could, if things really break their way, possibly make their way in. We talk about the regional champ Stonehill. They lost a lot, and I think that despite a really strong freshman class, they're a year too soon. I think St. Thomas Aquinas has lost way too much, although they'll have a plus 500 record. Caldwell lost too much as well in Southern Connecticut. I think those teams are out. So that leads me to say my 4 locks in the field, Bentley, LIU Post, Sciences, and Jefferson. And if you want me to pick a host that's going to be one of those 4, I'm going to say the regional is going to be held in the city of brotherly love at Sciences.
Okay, so we didn't pregame this, so I didn't know who you were selecting, and you didn't know who I was selecting, which makes this fun. So I also took those 4 teams, and I didn't realize that I had to pick 4 teams to make it from year to year, but that's the trend.
You don't. I'm just talking about my process.
Well, my process was completely haphazard. I picked 4 teams to return as well: Jefferson Sciences, Bentley, and LIU Post. And I have Jefferson moving on up and hosting the regional in 2019.
Okay, that's very reasonable. The Rams are a very good team. The one thing that might hurt them is strength of schedule. Science's strength of schedule is going to be greater. They're going to take a trip after Christmas to play both Bentley and Stonehill on the road. So I think you're talking about key games there. And Bentley is a team that should be in the mix hosting-wise as well. LIU Post, maybe not, even though the facility is great. I just don't think the strength of schedule is quite good enough there unless they run the table, which is not all that likely for anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jefferson's out-of-conference schedule is weak, no doubt. They play a lot of schools they should beat in the region, and the adjacent states of PSAC East schools. You know, the hardest school they're going to play is Westchester. They have a game against the Downey Stroudsburg team. And you're 100% right in that regard. I just think there's something about this Jefferson team trending in the right direction, and I think they're going to host the regional. So, even though one of us has to be wrong in this, we disagreed last year when you selected Bentley and I selected Sciences. So I'm glad that you finally come around to my side a year late.
Is that really what I'm doing?
You're a year late on that.
Apparently so.
And you're going to be a year behind this year when Jefferson hosts the regional, though we were both wrong last year when Stonehill hosted it. So who are the other teams joining those 4?
Well, I think it's a very wide open and interesting season after those 4. One of my predictions is that a team that was below 500 last year is going to make the field this year. And that's an easy one to say because I think that team will be AIC.
They were left off my list, and they were 9. And I look at them, I love watching Dana Watts play, but there's something about that squad last year that I don't know that they can contend game in and game out. Although their side, I think, is the side that I don't have anybody. I have one team coming out of the NE10 Southwest, and I think most people are going to be surprised that I picked Pace. Because I just think somebody's going to emerge from that, and why not then?
Okay, I understand your reticence on AIC. I look at it as everything went wrong last year. Everything went wrong. And when you look at teams that make the NCAA field, they generally have one of the more outstanding players in the region on their roster. And Dana Watts qualifies as that. Now, I think there's going to be a few teams orbiting the bubble in the Southwest Division. Pace is one of them. I think Lemoyne might be one of them. I think Adelphi certainly is going to be one of them. Southern Connecticut, maybe. So there are going to be some teams that at different times will look like they could threaten, but I think the only Southwest team that eventually makes it is AIC.
Now, I have one other team making it from the Northeast 10 to go along with Bentley, Pace, Southern New Hampshire. I think Southern New Hampshire makes the tournament this year. I just think Karen Pinko's club, they get in. I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know if they're going to beat Bentley and lose to a Division III school, but I know they don't have any on their schedule, so it's not going to happen. But they mix in great wins and horrific losses. This is the year they eliminate the losses, and they win and get in.
You were looking at my notes, right?
I was not. Yeah, I can't see. Those are too small. I'm in my 40s now. Those are too small. Your notes are tiny. Okay. How do you see that?
I'm in my 50s, and I wrote them. So now, as far as Southern New Hampshire goes, I agree with you on that. I mean, when you're talking about, again, the concept of the high-level player on that type of team, that's Kylie Lorenzen. I think there's more depth there. I think there's more experience. And I think that they're a little chastened by last year and letting things get away from them. So I think the focus is going to be a little better this year. They're going to eliminate a couple of those losses and win 20 and get in. Now, the other teams maybe orbiting in the Northeast Division, I think St. Anselm might. I think Merrimack could be also in that discussion, and maybe Stonehill if their youngsters grow up early. But for my money, it's Bentley and Southern New Hampshire joining AIC as any 10 teams in the field.
Yeah, if there's one team that I think wouldn't surprise me if they were in, it would be Merrimack. I just don't know how moving to Division I the year following affects them going forward. So let's transition to the ECC, where we said that, or we both said that LIU Post will return to the field. Another team that potentially they're not going to be around a year from now. I have one other team from the ECC making the dance, and that might surprise you. I think NYIT is going to make the field.
It doesn't surprise me. You see that little red mark next to
I can't.
I have the Bears too.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding you.
How do you expect me to read that?
I don't know, but somehow you did.
Yeah. No, I mean.
No, I like NYIT. Kenny Parham has proven he can take a team there before. There's so much material there, and he generally gets newcomers to come into the mix and contribute right away. And I think in an ECC that's a little down, I think Roberts Wesleyan is a little down from last year. I think St. Thomas Aquinas is more than a little down from last year. Malloy might, if things go really, really well, threaten it. But to me, NYIT ascends into that second spot in the East Coast Conference, wins enough games, and gets in.
So let's finish off in the CAC, where we already mentioned that we think that Jefferson and Sciences will be in the NCAA dance come the end of the year. And I have one other team. It's also a Philadelphia team, and they're in the same division as Jefferson and Sciences. It's really hard for three teams in one division, in half a conference, to make the tournament, but there's something about this Chestnut Hill team that I like a lot. So I'm predicting that they will make their first appearance in the NCAAs this year.
This sounds eternally boring, but I agree with you. I think Chestnut Hill is going to get there as well.
You know, I need a new agent.
You probably do. Now, that South Division in the CACC is going to be very interesting with the three Philadelphia teams killing each other in the regular season. Now, if you assume they just sort of split with each other, that's fine. But I think the rest of the conference is down to the point that all three of those teams shouldn't drop any games or maybe one stray game for some reason against somebody else. And that's enough to get there. I think there's with all due respect, there's a reasonable gap between those three teams and the rest in the CACC. There's a lot of work to do for the Bloomfields and Caldwells or the Dominicans to even be in that discussion.
So in summary, Tim McCaffrey selects Jefferson to host the regional this year, and the remaining teams in no particular order: the University of the Sciences, Chestnut Hill, Bentley, LIU Post, Southern New Hampshire, New York Institute of Technology, and Pace. And Steve Z selects
all of that with the exception of AIC instead of Pace.
And one other hosting of the regional.
I've already said Sciences, and I'm going to stick with that.
No, this is your last chance.
For what?
Steve Zerdalian, like my pal Chris, got 6 of the 8 teams a season ago, and if that trend continues, he'll be right at 75%. So 2 teams still have a chance out of this mix, and 2 teams that are here will not by the end of the year. As we conclude with the playoff podcast here on D2EastHoops.org, Tim McCaffrey, Steve Z, still with you, and Chris Granozio has crawled his way back up the stairs. Looks pretty worse for wear, but he'll have his prediction on who will win the men's basketball Division II East Regional in 2019 in a moment, but we'll stay with the women's basketball side, where Steve Zerdalian will tell us now who will win the regional in 2019.
It is a difficult decision. It came down to 3 choices for me, the 2 Philadelphia schools that we spoke about, and Bentley. I'm going to go for the Bentley Falcons to reascend to the top of the region.
And I'm selecting Jefferson. I think that if you select a team to host the regional, you should pick them to win the regional, no matter how wrong you might be. I think it'll be a long road to hoe for them with the competition step up. And if I look at it and Bentley is third, they might not face them at all. Bentley might get bounced before that, and that would be a big help to Jefferson. But that's the team that I think is going to win the regional. And we've been pretty good with these predictions in the last few seasons, and since we've been doing this podcast.
Well, I know, and fair enough. Jefferson's a very good team. Same for Sciences. What I foresee though is that the two Philly schools won't be the 1-2 seeds; they'll be 1-3, and I think Bentley will split the difference and be in the middle there. And when you have the day off between the semis and the championship, I think that just would help Bentley recover. The other thing is when we look at the recent history of the regional, the home team does not win more than 50% of the time. Stonehill did last year, but roll it back a couple of times, and Adelphi has hosted twice in recent years. Neither time did they win it. So having the home court is great, but it's no guarantee for winning the regional.
I was looking at this. Could you imagine if Bentley was the 2 seed, say, Chestnut Hill was the 7 seed, Sciences was the 3, and Jefferson, was the 1? They could potentially go to Philly, Bentley, and play 3 essentially natural road games.
It is certainly possible. It's a little bit of a long shot just mathematically, but that's not impossible.
What a fun podcast this is as we continue on the men's basketball side with Chris Granozio. And Chris, welcome back. Glad you were able to crawl back into that chair. Who do you think will win the regional?
Okay, I think it's going to come down to a St. Anselm Damon championship game. And I think Damon, I'm going to go way out on the limb here and say that this is the year that the Damon Wildcats, who bring back everybody, are going to emerge victorious. It's just a gut feeling, long shot, strange vibe that I feel. They just missed making the field last year with 22 wins. I know they feel cheated. I think this year they're going to be going for it. I think they're going to rack up a lot of wins in the regular season, and I think that they're going to propel themselves in the biggest game of their lives. They're going to win it. That's my prediction.
I was flipping a coin between Merrimack and St. A's. I've loved this St. A's team for a number of years, the turmoil they went through with the proposed transition to Division III. I think it's a coin flip between those two teams, start of the season being the two best teams in the region for my taste. And I think, like I said before, if you pick the team to host, pick them to win. What the heck, So I'm going to pick Merrimack, the Warriors, in their last season of Division II to win the Division II East region.
And that certainly can happen. They're a very, very talented team as well. I think Damon has the athleticism and the size to match up with both St. A's and Merrimack. I just have a feeling about the Wildcats, formerly the Warriors, and we all were interested. It's interesting that we were picking different teams this year because last year we both picked Lemoyne and they were the regional champs. This year, I'm sticking with an upstate New York team, and you're going with an NE10 power, and I think anything can happen, and any of these teams can win it.
I wonder if people will stay away from thinking Merrimack will win because they're upset that they're going Division I. And if you look at this in reality, they have great guards, and big men win games, guards win championships. And I know Damon's similar. I mean, Damon's real similar. But there's just something about this Warrior team that I think they're finally going to crescendo. Yeah,
and it's very possible. And again, you mentioned the great guard play. All 3 of these teams that we were talking about in the mix for possibly winning it, St. A's, Merrimack, Damon, they all have excellent backcourts.
And there's a great chance that somebody not on our top 8 will end up in the regional and maybe even win it. You just never know what can happen, what can surprise us. Any closing thoughts from either one of you guys?
Well, I'm just saying that this is the fun time of year. It's like in the beginning of baseball season when everybody's 0-0 and everybody's dreaming of a pennant right now. I think, right now every team's got reason to be optimistic, and it's fun to make the crystal ball predictions right now, but let the games begin and let's see how we stack up later. And if this is bulletin board material for some schools, let it be. But right now, this is the way I see the region at this very moment, but that can change a million times between now and March.
For my broadcast partners, Steve, you have something left to say?
I have nothing left to say other than I'm a process guy, and I like to see the process unfold during the season. That's the fun part for me is to see teams develop and recreate themselves in a different image, because as much as we sit here and talk about what they could be based on what they were, what they are can be completely different.
And also to follow up on Steve's process, I checked after he mentioned that half of the field normally returns. On the men's side, it's similar, and I also happen to have picked 4 teams that were there last year and 4 teams that weren't. So we're all in alignment there.
Anything? Okay, now I can close up shop here, folks. And we can't thank you enough for listening to us right here on d2easthoops.org. We hope you enjoy these podcasts. They're meant for fun. We don't want to offend. And for my broadcast partners, Chris Granozio and Steve Zerdelian, I'm Tim McCaffrey. We'll see you next time on D2EastHoops.org. Goodbye, everybody.